Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Doris, MC of today. Welcome to the second webinar of Using the STEP Adaptation Tool in Adapted Physical Activity from Theory to Application series, which is also the third webinar of the Professional Development Training of the Jockey Club Sports Without Limits Youth Empowerment Program. The program is organized by the Department of Sports Science and Physical Education of the Chinese University of Hong Kong and is funded by the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charities Trust. The aim of the program is to empower children and youth with disabilities to get physically active and healthy through the provision of adaptive physical activity, APA, in school and family settings. Before we start the webinar, I would like to draw your attention to the following disclaimer. The views expressed by our guest speaker in the webinar were his own and should not be taken as the views of the program. The webinar will be photographed and recorded for advertisement and promotion purposes. The rundown of today's webinar is shown on the screen. Today, Professor Cindy Sitz will serve as our moderator of this webinar. She has rich research experience in APA. I shall now pass the floor to Professor Sitz, the principal investigator of the program. Professor Sitz, please.
Thank you, Doris. So can you hear me right?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, teachers, and also Ken. Thank you so much for your interest in attending this webinar. We are fortunate to receive funding from the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charities Trust and get strong support from Executive Manager of Charities, Ms. Donna Chen and her team. This second series of webinar is based on our previous webinar on APA delivered by our project consultant, Mr. Ken Black. There will be 2 more series of webinars in the coming 2 months. Upon successful completion of the entire webinar series, participants will get a training certificate endorsed by 4 organizations: UNESCO Chair on Transforming the Lives of People with Disabilities through Physical Education, Sport, Fitness and Recreation, International Federation of Adapted Physical Activity, AFAPA, European Federation of Adapted Physical Activity, UFAPA, and Asian Society for Adapted Physical Education and Exercise, ASAPE. So please join me in welcoming Ken.
Hi. Hello, everybody from the UK. Ning Hao. I just wanted to say, it sounds like you've got quite nice weather there today. It's only rained once here recently. It started last Monday and it didn't stop till yesterday. So it only rained once, but all week. Anyway, I'm looking forward to speaking with you all as we go along. And I think we can start the process by reviewing the previous video lecture, which I hope you've all had an opportunity to view. After the lecture, we also sent you some questions, and the questions were designed really to try and accentuate and reinforce some of the points that I was trying to make in the video lecture. So I just wanted to pick up on 1 or 2 of the questions where they seemed to be less understanding, or perhaps it was the way I phrased the options. But I just wanted to pick up on a few things as a kind of review of the video. I think the 2 main ones were the question 6 was about really the philosophy that's behind my approach and the approach that many of my colleagues have developed over the years towards the inclusion of young people in physical activity. And that approach is based on something called the social environmental approach. And that means that the emphasis is not so much on what someone's impairment is, although it's important to have understanding, but it's saying that what we're trying to say is that the impairment is not the start point. The start point is, what do you want this young person to do? What do they want to do? What are the activities they would like to do? And how, as teachers, we can facilitate their entry and their success in those activities. So the philosophy really is based on an approach which is a much wider philosophical approach to inclusion, which includes political as well as legislative aspects. But what we're trying to do is apply it to physical activity. So the emphasis is on what you guys do, because you can change what you do. You can't change people's impairments, whereas you can change the way you communicate, the way you organize an activity, the way that you, the equipment that you might select. You can do all those things, and that these are aspects that you can manipulate and change. We can't change the young people's impairments, but we can change the way we teach, the way we lead, the way we coach. And so the focus is on what we do, because we have control over that. We don't have control over people's impairments. We just have control over what we can do. So that's the background to that, that particular aspect. The question that was on the philosophy behind inclusion. I think the other one on leadership, that some people gave some different answers. I think what we're really saying is that on leadership, we want to provide as many opportunities as possible for young people to lead, but we have to provide the support. So it's not just a question of putting a young person in a leadership situation and then standing back to watch. We have to provide the preparation so that they feel ready to lead, and then the support while they're leading, so that they can improve their leadership skills, their confidence, and their ability to work with their peers. I think that's all I'd like to say about the video at this point. So we can probably move on. So what we're doing in these breakout areas is really this webinar is an opportunity for you to talk with colleagues, to share your ideas and experiences, because everybody in this webinar has different experiences, different levels of experience, but also different actual experiences with working with young people. And many of you are working with different kinds of young people, people whose abilities differ. So it's a chance for us to talk together as a group, share those ideas, and then share with the wider group. So the idea is to give you about 10 minutes to discuss a particular topic. We will then, as a group, as a whole group, discuss and review what you have come up with, and then move our way through each topic. And basically, we're going to try to go through each of the components of the STEP Adaptation Tool. So about 10 minutes to discuss, 5 minutes for us all to review together, and then we move on to the next part of the next part of the discussion. But it's really all about you guys, what you can talk about from each other. I'd like you to share your ideas around each of these different STEP components, things that you may have tried, or things that you feel you want to ask about in terms of the video, for example. You know, what do you need some more clarification about what task means? and what are the different aspects of people, young people interacting and working together. So this is what the routine is, moving from a breakout room back to review and so on until we have completed the 4 components of STEP. So we should have everyone back.
Yep.
So what we need is the representative of Group 1 to just give us some feedback on your discussion. Just 1 or 2 main points, please.
Yes, it depends, and there are 2 aspects that I can think of about space. Yeah. And, the first one is we can always limit the space to lower the requirement for the skill. For example, shorten the distance so that they can have an easier performance, easier to get the skill, and further you can increase the distance. And for the games, maybe if they are always lined out, the student will think it is not without a boundary, so that they can have a smoother game.
Yeah, that's a good. But the boundaries point is great. Can I just pick up on those? Yeah, I mean that's absolutely right. That if we reduce the space, we can support people whose mobility is impaired, for example. And there's 2 ways to look at what we've just heard. If we reduce space, it tends to increase interaction between the participants. So they're closer together, they can interact more in, say, a ball game, for example. If we increase the space, then we're encouraging mobility and movement. So it depends on partly what we want to do. If we want the young people to move more, then we can try and make the space larger. If we want people to interact more, we can make the space smaller. So that point is absolutely dead on. So thanks for that. And then the idea of no boundaries, I think, is excellent. You might remember from the video, I talked a bit about boundaries in space, in the space section, and how we can manipulate and change those. But of course, that's an excellent point, that sometimes for young people, they don't always immediately recognize boundaries. They don't see where the edge of a space is in terms of the markings for a specific activity or sport. I found, this is one tip I would like to finish this part with. I found that if you work with the young people and they create the boundaries themselves, they recognize them better. So in other words, if you organize a game which involves the young people placing the boundary markers themselves, even if it doesn't create a recognized space, like a rectangle or a square, even if it's just a random space, I find that if they have created the boundary themselves, then they seem to recognize and respond to it more positively. So can I say thanks very much to Group 1? Okay, I think we have everyone back from the discussion about task, and I'd like to invite the representative from Group 2 to feedback on this aspect. So, what were your main points following your discussion on task?
Yeah, our group is focused on the ability of the students, so that we make the task. We divide into a small task that our student can achieve it, make it more easy to play, and then we'll set an adapted way to for our students to learn. Just like last time your video. play the table tennis, and then the first touch is the rolling to the opposite side, and then roll back, and then you can wear the glove to instead of your rackets, and then this have the progressively, and then to play it, and then also just like last time your PowerPoint like to play an alternative way to perform an action or skills, that is our adaptive way for our students, and then our aim is to maintain the interest of our students, because when they like to play, and then they will keep continue play this game, and then maybe in the future they can have progressively through the skill level, and then they can not only play with the student with disabilities, and also they can go to the public, and then to participate the public games, and then play with the general public. It is very, very difficult to do those kinds of adaptive ways to have some drill with one or two students, and then maybe the other student maybe need to wait for me. So that, yes. Yeah, do you have any suggestion for us to deal with this kind of problems?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the question first. I mean, one thing Kenny could do is a rotation system. So you're working with most of the group, and then gradually withdrawing one person, which perhaps the assistant can work with, or you can. And so you have a task which is aimed at the whole group, and then you withdraw one or two in a rotation basis and try to do some specific things with individuals that way. But I understand completely that you've got this huge range, and the other approach is always to try and group, depending on the activity, group people in activity groups. So there might be a small group who can work independently with not much support, just a word now and again. And then there's another group that might need more support, perhaps a third group with just one or two people who are working more, you're working more intensively with. And who is in each group will change depending on the activity. But just to summarize the points you made, Kenny, I know we don't have so much time, is I think the point about progression is really good. You have to keep the young people interested, and one way to keep them interested is to give them success. So something that's achievable, they succeed, and then they're motivated to continue. So I think that's a really great point. And the last thing about modification is, you know, people think that it's some special power that only people working in special education have. Every teacher modifies, every coach modifies in a small way. And so all we're doing in special ed, and I worked for 10 years in special education myself, all we're doing in special education is that those modifications, we're just broadening the parameters, and it's a you know, we have to create more adaptation than perhaps regular teachers or coaches might do. But everyone modifies, so it's just something that's natural, and it's not something special to people working with special needs kids. But that's a great point, and I thought a question, I hope I answered it a bit. What I will do is I'll make note of the questions that come up, and try and communicate with you more fully via the team. Okay, thanks. I think we have to move on to the next. Okay, wonder if we can invite the representative from Group 3, please, to tell us one or two things from your discussion, please.
Hello. In our group, we have discussed that we can, for For example, when we teach the table tennis or some other ball games, we may use another ball. For example, we may use the soft volleyball to replace the table tennis, so that they can more easier to hit the ball, and also maybe we can holding up the ball in the air, and so use balloon. Yes, or using the balloon to make them more easy to hit the ball, or to know where the hitting point. And also we may use some bigger ball to increase the possibility of hitting, so that they can have more confidence in acquiring the skill.
Yeah.
Also,
and also we can change the table size, not use the regular table tennis table. We can use the dash.
Yes, yeah, and they don't have to propel the ball so far.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. The point about the slower moving balls, balloons. Just one thing, a little tip I've tried with balloons. If they are using a racket, say a badminton racket, or it could be a table tennis racket, but they start with a balloon. One thing that I've used over the years is I attach the balloon to the racket with very light thread, not heavy string, because the balloon would just fall, but very, very light thread attached to the racket. And that way, quite a long piece. And that way it always brings the balloon back to the young person's racket. And I found that works pretty well. One thing, when we get to the next lecture, when we're talking about sports specific, I want to share a specific adaptation around table tennis. So I will be talking about a game called Polybat, and it's something you can all adapt just using equipment you have. If I had been coming to Hong Kong, which was the plan, I was going to bring Polybat with me so that everyone could see it. But I can demonstrate it in the next lecture. Anything else you guys found? Was there any other aspects of equipment that anyone in the group mentioned?
And maybe sometime we will use the equipment other than sport equipment. For example, we attach the ball with A4 box, and that the student no need to holding up the ball, because the ball may be too heavy for them to hold when they are learning the passing. So we may attach the ball on the A4 boxes, so he or she can easily just push on the ball.
No, that's great. It's like using a tee to knock the ball off, so that And other thing I've tried, again, I'll try and show in the next lecture when we're looking at sports specific, is you can use channels. So say two benches on the ground, and they can push the ball, and the benches direct the ball towards and quite often I use big Swiss balls. You know, the Swiss ball, the exercise balls, and kids can push those. They can use their whole body to push an exercise ball. And if you use benches, that can help propel the ball towards a target, for example. But those are all great points. And it's what I always say about adaptation is it's not rocket science. It's just trying things that make sense and make it easier for young people to. Obviously, we can challenge young people also. If we see that young people are finding things too easy, we can make the ball smaller. We can give them something that moves faster, and that's so we can use adaptation to support, but we can also use adaptation to challenge. What we're going to do for this last part is take 1 point from each group. So if we can have a representative from each group, we're going to take 1 quick point from each group. So if we could have the representative of group 1 to make a point about the people question. Thanks. Thanks.
Our group has shared about the student with different ability. They play different role in a sports game. For example, when we play the football, some people they are more able. They can stand. They can kick the ball. They can play different role. But some student with wheelchair, maybe we assign them to be the goalkeeper.
Yeah,
they can move their wheelchair to keep the goal, and maybe the goal is very big, and so we can share the goal. One student with the wheelchair student keep the goal, and the other student, more able student, keep the other side of the goal.
Yes, so you have two goalkeepers.
Yeah. And also the wheelchair student, they can be the judge. They can observe the games and to point out the fault the student they commit, and to stop the game and to restart the game.
Referee or umpire kind of role. Yeah. Okay, look, we have to move to the next group. So I'm sorry if I cut you off, but those are good points. I'm going to, when we do the next lecture and we're looking at sports specific, I am going to try and share again some ways. I think I tried to, in the lecture, talk about ways in which you could divide the space up and have people of different abilities in different parts of the court. But I will focus on some ways of including wheelchair users and ambulant walking people together in the game. And I'll talk about that in the next lecture when we are looking at sports-specific adaptations. Okay, thanks for that.
And I would like to share some of my sharing about the matching abilities to promote inclusion. Sometimes we may have exercise on same ability group together to have learned some skills, but sometimes if we have different objectives, we may try to have a diverse ability group to work together. Different ways to raise our students' ability. For example, if you have same ability group working together, you can try to maybe sometimes you can put the best player together and you can raise them to a higher skill level. But sometimes when you play team games or ball games, team games, you can have matching different ability students to a group so that they can they can learn how to play with different skills students. Sometimes teachers' involvement is also important because teachers involved in a game together can raise the involvement of the lower ability students in the ball games, so they can have better success or a better achievement.
It's a good point about using players who have higher competencies or skill levels to support the other players. At some point, you have to allow the better players, if you like, to be able to play to their best ability. And so sometimes if they're playing with other players who have high skill level, they can play together. But I think it's sometimes very good, as you say, to mix the abilities together so that they can learn from each other, particularly those who are still developing their skills, to learn from those whose skill level is higher. Again, I'll try and pick some of these points up in the next lecture when we talk about sports-specific options. So thanks, Group 3, please, for the comment on people.
Hello, my name is Elise, and we are talking about the equality of the games. We all think that the equality is not depends on the team numbers of the group, but only depends on the average student ability. That means the team numbers of the group may not equal. For example, maybe some of the situations may be 3 students versus 5 students, and but their ability is similar. So that is the point that, and most of them thinks that the number of the group equality is very important, but we think the ability equality is more important. That's our point. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, that we don't always have to have the same team numbers, and sometimes in order to create balance in a game, we can have more kids in one group who are perhaps their skills are still developing and they can support each other against a smaller group of children who might have a higher competency level, but they have to work harder against the bigger group. So somehow it balances the game. So that's a really good point. And as I said, I think before, I will try and put together the points that you've raised along with my comments and try and share that with the whole group via the team. Okay, thanks very much for your feedback. We've got one more kind of challenge for you, which is the last opportunity for you guys to have a quick discussion. We may gone over our time slightly, but what I want to do is try and give each group again an opportunity to give us one piece of inclusive practice that you feel you could apply where you are now almost immediately. And I know from what people have said already that there's been a lot of great suggestions, and so you're already doing a lot of great work. But could we have somebody from group 1, please, to just give us an idea of an example of something you could apply immediately?
In the current situation, I think the most challenging is the COVID-19 PE lesson, because in our school, all our students need to wear masks during the PE lesson. So we need to be careful on the safety of the students. For example, the exercise intensity, or are they using the equipment together for also the hygiene concerns. So we cannot do very kinds of ball games or etc. It's very challenging situation now in the PE lesson, and sometimes about the Zoom PE lesson also, because in their home environment they may not have enough space, or they may not have their parents' support. And how can we can have the PE lesson in a safety way is very important.
Okay, no, that's real important. Of course, we're in a kind of artificial situation at the moment, and perhaps for a few more months. What I think I will do again in the next lecture, I want to talk about how we can overcome some of these issues. I've just, in fact, done a program here in the UK based on at-home activities, a series of videos for schools here in the UK. So I'll try and share some of those ideas with you. But I think what we have to do is we have to conclude the program now, and we were due to summarize. And I think what I've been doing is I've summarized as we have progressed. So I think we don't need to summarize the whole point, except that I know there's a lot of great ideas people have shared, and there'll be a lot more. And I've got some ideas on how we can extract those ideas that you all have and share them in another way. So instead, I think of doing the questions, I'm going to suggest this. I'm going to suggest that anyone who has a question they want to ask, can you please send us by email to the team So to Doris and the team, and they will then pass the questions on to me, and I will reply in more fully. And so I'll be able to send a better answer rather than just a very quick answer now. So I think if you can send questions, any questions you have based on the video or based on what we've talked about today, and I will answer those and send them back to you via the team. So I think that's the way we could deal with the questions. Last part, I think Cindy Sitt perhaps is going to just close proceedings.
Okay, thank you, Ken. I noticed that we had a very fruitful discussion and sharing among participants in their respective breakout rooms. So actually we adopt a flipped classroom concept that we would like to encourage our participants to watch the videos, and then once they have this kind of knowledge, and then they can also bring their experience back for discussion among colleagues. So this is the aim, and so we are trying this kind of approach, and we do have the next 2 coming webinars, and for sure that we will also like to see further in-depth discussion and sharing next time. Okay, so thank you so much for your participation.
The PowerPoint slides and the video recorded will be released on our program website and YouTube channel. To help us plan for future webinars, please spare a few minutes to fill in an evaluation survey via the link or QR code as shown on the screen. The link is also up on the chat box. For upcoming events, please visit our website for details. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you. Told you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Professor Steve.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.